Hello, and welcome to the Optimal Terminology for Equine Assisted Services presentation. I'm Kathy Alm. I am the retired CEO of Path International. I had the privilege of being CEO from 2014 to 2026, and I was a part of this initiative to develop optimal terminology for equine assisted services. The reason optimal terminology became so important is because we realized the incredible confusion that existed around our equine assisted services because words matter. As services incorporating equines evolved and expanded, so did the terms used to describe those services. There was not consensus on what services were called, leading to an unwieldy expansion of terms used to describe the same service, and in some cases, the same term being used to describe different services. This led to increased confusion for consumers, for researchers, for service providers, and funders. Coming to consensus on optimal terminology has led to a reduction of that confusion, as well as ensuring that service providers were meeting the needs of participants. And consumers, both individuals and organizations, had a better idea of what type of service that they needed and what type of service they were receiving. By using optimal terminology, researchers are increasing the credibility of all equine-assisted services by providing a consistent body of research for a particular service, and service providers are better able to name and describe the service that they are offering and ensure that the public understands if they are receiving therapy, or they're receiving learning, or they're receiving a therapeutic service. Lastly, clear terminology provides the opportunity for therapy to be covered by insurance and therapeutic horsemanship to be covered by Medicaid waiver funding, as well as philanthropic funding to support the service that fits within the funder's guidelines and mission. In order to reach consensus on optimal terminology, we embarked on an inclusive, sustained, systematic, and comprehensive effort to address problems of imprecise and unclear terminology pertaining to services that incorporate horses to benefit people. I know that's a bit of a mouthful, but you will come to understand as we go through this how important it is to be clear about what you are talking about. This process culminated in a published article that details all resulting terminology recommendations and their supporting rationales. The consensus building process was inclusive, sustained, systematic, and comprehensive because it followed these 6 progressive steps over a 2-year period of time. Step 1 was that in 2018, Path International obtained funding from the Bob Woodruff Foundation to support the consensus building process and convened a working group of 5 leaders. The working group developed and distributed a national survey to ascertain how interested parties perceive the relative usefulness of prominently used terms. And to develop the survey, the group assembled a comprehensive list of commonly used terms from websites of 17 relevant national organizations and from over 150 relevant books and peer-reviewed journal articles published since 1980. 16,156 online surveys were distributed to members of the American Hippotherapy Association, Equine Experiential Education Association, also known as E3A, EGALA, Equus Foundation, and Path International. In addition to approximately 500 recipients of services, their parents or caregivers. In total, 1,745 completed and usable surveys were returned and analyzed. Guided by survey findings, the working group planned a professionally facilitated 2.5-day terminology summit. The survey responses were incredible. It ended up in what I refer to as the big ugly spreadsheet, because that spreadsheet had all these different terms. And for example, there were 90 different definitions of the term hippotherapy. So the working group got together and planned a facilitated 2.5-day terminology summit. Members of the working group, plus 10 other individuals with extensive experience and perspectives, participated in this summit. By the summit's conclusion, the group had produced an initial framework of recommendations. Then step 4. After the summit, the work group expanded to include equine-assisted learning representation. The work group worked on the consensus document with ongoing feedback from the larger group, as well as focus groups and boards comprised of individuals and doing this work. During step 4 and guided by the initial framework, the working group developed a first draft of recommendations. Other summit attendees approved this draft as suitable for further review by leaders and board members of the aforementioned organizations. During step 5, the working group considered all received reviews and finalized terminology recommendations accordingly. And then during step 6, the working group submitted final recommendations to other summit attendees for their approval or disapproval, and the boards of directors of national organizations involved in the consensus building process, in addition to the American Horse Council, Certified Horsemanship Association, and Horses and Humans Research Foundation. The final document was approved by 12 of the 14 summit members with 1 abstention and endorsed by 5 boards of major interested parties. Ultimately, this process culminated in widespread endorsement of recommendations to adopt specific optimal terminology and to discontinue uses of specific problematic terms. This is the paper that was published in the Journal for Alternative and Complementary Medicine in November of 2020. A copy of this paper can be found on the Path International website. Optimal Terminology for Services in the United States that Incorporate Horses to Benefit People, which is a consensus document. Here is a list of authors for this paper. I've included this list so that you can see how this was truly a consensus document developed by 7 subject matter experts plus the additional 10 summit attendees. And it's an example of the fact that this is not solely a Path International initiative. We drew people from all across the industry in order to really build consensus for the industry as opposed to only for Path International. This represents a summary of the optimal terminology. As you can see, the final recommendation from the summit was to recognize 3 distinct areas that are part of equine-assisted services. Those areas are therapy, learning, and horsemanship. Therapy or healthcare encompasses medical and behavioral health. Therapy is provided by a licensed, certified medical and behavioral health professional working within their scope of practice in counseling, occupational therapy, physical therapy, psychotherapy, recreational therapy, and speech-language pathology. Within the learning sector is the establishment of 3 areas: equine-assisted learning and education, equine-assisted learning and personal development, and equine-assisted learning in organizations. The horsemanship or equine industry takes existing disciplines such as riding, driving, and vaulting, and delineates areas of adaptive equestrian sport, adaptive riding or therapeutic riding, driving, and interactive vaulting. The paper identifies that the professionals working in these established industries have distinct training and possible licensing or certification. Beyond that, these professionals have sought out continuing education to be able to bring horses and people together safely and effectively within their work. The term EAS is used to refer to more than one service at a time. This might happen when discussing common issues or interests that are shared, such as the training of volunteers or the retirement of horses. Please note that equine-assisted services is not sitting on top. It is not intended as an overarching term, but as a unifying term, a term that recognizes the connection of the horse between all of these services. We will dive a little deeper into these areas as well as the unifying term of equine-assisted services. We're going to start with the unifying term. Why a unifying term instead of an umbrella term? Equine-assisted services is recommended as an optimal unifying term to refer to multiple services in which professionals incorporate horses and other equines to benefit people. Services refer to work done for or on behalf of others. Unifying is defined in a manner that identifies the common thread that 12 otherwise different types of services share. Most contributors to the consensus building process believe that this concise shorthand term was necessary, both to refer to multiple services that incorporate horses and other equines, as well as to help diverse professionals who provide varied services collaborate, discuss, and resolve common issues. Furthermore, in the absence of recommending equine-assisted services, uses of alternative terms that have shown to be problematic would have continued usage. Optimal thus refers to the succinctness and accuracy of equine-assisted services, which was deemed superior to other terms. Lastly, equine-assisted services is intentionally plural because its function is to serve as an efficient shorthand for referring to at least two or more services. Although any one distinct service constitutes a type of equine-assisted services, clarity and precision would require that this service be named and marketed, not as an equine-assisted service, but rather by using the most appropriate optimal terminology next presented, such as physical therapy, equine-assisted learning for organizations, or driving. The point being that there are three separate areas within equine-assisted services, and each of those areas is a standalone industry or area. And that is why equine-assisted services is a unifying term as opposed to describing an overarching industry or area. So therapy is the first area we're going to talk about. The therapy area references services that are delivered by licensed therapy professionals within the scope of their practice. Specific therapies, treatments, or interventions may incorporate horses to address medical, cognitive, or behavioral health conditions as part of the individual plan of care. This section describes the value and importance of using therapy first language and to precisely identify the type of therapy being provided. Some examples, these are not limited to, may include physical therapy using equine movement, psychotherapy incorporating horses, or occupational therapy in an equine environment. Therapy language clearly and accurately identifies that a professional therapy service is being provided and in which the choice to incorporate horses through the movement, environment, or relationship may be one part of an overall treatment plan. There is not a different standalone therapy involving horses. Referrals and billing are made to the professional therapy, namely counseling, occupational therapy, physical therapy, psychotherapy, or speech-language pathology. Using therapy first language ensures that the consumer, the researcher, and insurance companies recognize that this service as a therapy service. It also helps to clarify for service providers to ensure that there is no perceived misrepresentation on what service they are offering. Equine-assisted learning is a broad term that hosts three distinct services: equine-assisted learning in education, equine-assisted learning in organizations, and equine-assisted learning in personal growth. This is a very growing area and became much more well-defined through this process and through the summit. These services are non-therapy services and are delivered by specially trained or certified professionals. These professionals must possess appropriate training, experience, and skill in facilitating the particular content of the learning service. In other words, a trained educator should be involved in equine-assisted learning and education, just as a trained personal development coach should be involved in equine-assisted learning in personal growth. In other words, someone teaching ABCs while a participant rides the horse is not necessarily an equine-assisted learning service unless that somebody is a trained educator and it is part of the overall plan for that participant. In addition, the professional must have extensive knowledge of horse behavior and handling, knowledge of human-horse relationships, and the ability to design experiential learning activities involving horses or work in partnership with an equine specialist. As a PATH International Center, you must have an ESMHL, Equine Specialist in Mental Health and Learning, or Certified Therapeutic Riding Instructor in the session if you are doing groundwork, or a Certified Therapeutic Riding Instructor if you are doing mounted work. Qualified professionals can facilitate the outcomes of the learning activities to promote valuable life skills and personal growth that provide benefits to the client or clients. Equine-assisted learning activities can involve interactions with horses, can be mounted, unmounted activities, and can include the equine environment. Horsemanship. This area refers to non-therapy services delivered by specially trained or certified professionals whose primary area of expertise is in the discipline of horsemanship, including but not limited to riding instruction, in which the primary goal is to provide access to the benefits of horsemanship for individuals or groups with a variety of special needs, specific conditions, diagnoses, and/or disabilities. These are therapeutic riding or adaptive riding, interactive vaulting, driving, groundwork, or adaptive equestrian sports. There was much discussion about the terms therapeutic riding and adaptive riding. They appear to be used interchangeably by 50% of the survey respondents, and those 50% that thought they were different didn't significantly differentiate in the definitions they chose, other than to show that those that want to emphasize the natural therapeutic value of riding choose therapeutic riding, and those that want to differentiate more clearly between therapy and riding activities choose adaptive riding. Adaptive riding is a more recent term and consistent with terms in other adaptive sports, whereas therapeutic riding is well recognized and has been used in the US and internationally for more than half a century. This is a very important list. These are terms recommended for discontinuation. These terms were found to be problematic as they don't specifically describe the type of service provided and contribute to the current confusion. My favorite, not, equine therapy. It's used a lot because it's a shorthand. But equine therapy, is the horse getting therapy? If not, what type of therapy is it really? Equestrian therapy and horse therapy all are especially problematic because it names something that doesn't exist and is not specific to the type of service being provided. I have a tendency to twitch when I hear these terms, especially equine therapy. I know that it has been used a lot in the media and feels quick and easy to use. Occasionally, I still hear presenters using this term, which is usually when you see me twitching. I didn't realize how noticeable my reaction can be until I was in a presentation at another region conference, and the presenter kept using the term equine therapy and hippotherapist. I was trying to figure out how to bring this up so the audience would gain clarity without coming across as the terminology police, when the person next to me brought it up instead. After the presentation, this person leaned over to me and said, "I saw you twitching, so I knew I had to say something." I thanked her profusely. You will notice all of these terms on this slide are not specific to the type of service being provided. Lastly, here are some resources for you. We've listed here, we have the, pardon me, all of these resources are on the website. Equine Assisted Services Terminology Checklist for Centers. This is a document that your center can use to identify which services are being offered. EAS Definitions Guide for Service Providers. This is a document you can use to screen potential participants to determine which service is best for them. And EAS Definitions Guide for Researchers to assist researchers in using the optimal terminology in their research in order to clarify. And lastly, the published paper, Optimal Terminology for Services in the United States that Incorporate Horses to Benefit People, a consensus document. Thank you for learning about optimal terminology. As I said in the beginning, words matter. Coming to consensus on optimal terminology has led to a reduction of confusion, as well as ensuring that service providers are meeting the needs of participants and consumers, both individuals and organizations, have a better understanding of what service they need and what service they're receiving. By using the optimal terminology, researchers are increasing the credibility of all equine-assisted services by providing a consistent body of research that is clear about which service is being studied in order to better able to name and in order to build a body of research for a particular service. Service providers are better able to name and describe the service they are offering and ensuring the public understands if they are receiving therapy, learning, or a therapeutic service. I wish you well as you use the optimal terminology and bring clarity to the services you provide or the research you are engaged in. Thank you.